I would like to ask Mr. Orban about his expectations of the government in relation to Donald Trump in the next few minutes. Good morning.
Good morning.
We see that there is a kind of expectation around the world in relation to the presidency, and it seems that everyone starts from this new situation and decides on the next steps. What will be the biggest difference between the resigned Biden and the Trump administration in office?
Everything. Everything will change. Today is Friday, but the inauguration is due to be held on Monday morning, above the Western world. It is the end of a painful, difficult, and painful 4 years, the fourth term of the Democratic government. The beginning of it has already started badly. After all, the presidency was taken by deception from Donald Trump. So in 2020, if they do not cheat, which is still only an example in Western democracy, or at least it should be, then Donald Trump would have remained president, and then there would be no Ukrainian-Russian war, to draw attention to only one important difference. But after the president was cheated, the president was pulled out of the election. There was a Democratic government. A Democratic government is always different from a Republican, not only in terms of content, but also in terms of methods. The Republicans are based on a national basis, and the Democrats are globalists. And through organizations that connect the world, which are not directly American government organizations, but they are connected to the American government. So through such a network, they enrich their interests. This is the most well-known branch of this. A network that can be described by the name of George, the son of our country. But there are a few more. This is not the only one in the world. In Asia, in Africa, others are also working in the interest of the American Democrats. As the prison guard, the smuggler says in the movie, they are a branch of themselves. So the Soros and the Democrats are essentially part of a large network. They have basic economic interests, and the politics is underpinned by their economic interests. They have strong intentions to improve the world, so they think that it is their obligation, their right, and their mission to improve humanity. That is, to force the countries to do what they think is right there in Washington, as Democrats. At this time, migration and migratory chaos precede the world. At this time, gender equality is liberated, so traditional families are more likely to withdraw if the American Democrats come, because then there will be pride. Smugglers, transgenders, non-transformers, then the world is no longer made up of men and women, but we do not know how many species. So this is the second consequence. And they do not hesitate to achieve their goals with war, as they did with the Russian-Ukrainian war.
Yes, if we look at the situation from the point of view of Hungarian-American relations, then what can we expect? Because in the last few weeks, at least in political terms, they have fallen to a low point. The United States has put Antal Rogan on the list of sanctions, and the outgoing Prime Minister has repeatedly condemned the government. How do you assess the American-Hungarian relations now?
Well, they sent a hitman here after all, who would have had the job of hitting Hungary, or, since we are talking about Mr. Pressman, we can say that he would have hit Hungary in that globalist liberal Democrat canon, which is ready to spread migration parties, gender parties, and war, ready to spread war and Western values in the world. But Hungary is not such a country. This is where the problems came from. Hungary does not want migrants. So, we have a 100-year history of the Carpathian Basin. We respect the 300-year history of the United States, but we still have our own history, our own path, our own mission. We are a reason why we are in the world, why Hungary exists, and the heart of it is that the Carpathian Basin, the territory entrusted to us, we live in it, we cultivate it, we raise it according to our own culture, we create our own Hungarian world. It is not enough for a hitman from America to come here and say, Let the migrants in, and from tomorrow this land, which was yours for 1,100 years, but now it is not yours, not even your neighbors. Okay, I do not encourage that either, but it is at least an understandable story. But that people come here from the other side of the world and live well from you, what you have been working for 1,100 years, that does not fit into the thinking of a Hungarian. So, in the beginning, the work of the American ambassador was judged with shame. It is no coincidence that I was willing to meet him, which is quite unparalleled, let's face it. So, when he was sent here, it was obvious what kind of mission he was sent for, and I did not want to assist him. It was clear that the Hungarians are family friends. The family is the most important thing in the mind of a Hungarian. The fact that they look down on this traditional family model, they mock it. Instead, they offer all kinds of bullshit. They look down on those who imagine their lives among traditional family boundaries, so we could not accept this. And the element of war obviously opposes Hungary. First of all, economically, but also in terms of security, because the next door is a war zone. So it was logical that the relations would come to a low point. The two-way tax exemption agreement was not renewed. The entry of the Hungarians was made difficult in America, and wherever they could, they harmed us. This is only the last little story that one of the ministers of the Hungarian government was put on the list of sanctions, which never strengthened the minister's position in Hungarian politics and the Hungarian government, because I can only read that he is doing his job well. He is the responsible minister for national security services. He is the first one for the Hungarian national sovereignty. And if a big power punishes him, it means that he is doing his job well. So, we have to start from here. I have an agreement with the U.S. President that a golden era will follow, because the Republicans are not far from thinking in a grand way, and the bold statements are not far either. So, a fantastic, grand, golden era will follow in the American-Hungarian relations. This will be felt every day in the pockets and in the family spending. The fact that the Hungarian economy was able to launch a plane and it took off was a prerequisite for Donald Trump to win the U.S. elections and bring peace to the horizon. And after 3 years of war, finally after 3 years of war, the era of reconstruction will come again. This is why we can say that a new era will begin from Monday.
It is interesting that in addition to the Hungarian-American relations, there are also American and European relations, because so far we have seen that the majority of Brussels shares the position of the Democrats. At the same time, if we look at the European political map, we see that the Patriot Party can expect a new head of government without Herbert Kick. The Italian Prime Minister has so far, at least as a head of government, talked about not Elon Musk, but George Soros. How could Trump's presidency affect the relations between the majority of Brussels and the Patriot Party?
When Donald Trump won for the first time in 2016, something happened that we rarely talked about. And usually the Hungarian public, and even the European public. This is that the Democrats fled to Brussels. The same thing is happening now. George Soros lost the battle in America. America was liberated by Donald Trump. The teams are now retreating to Brussels. We Europeans have to face a very difficult period now. They are putting themselves in Brussels, and our only goal can be, if we really want to live the way the Hungarians want to live, we have to get them out of Brussels. We have to put them on a ship and send them back to America. If we don't do this, then Brussels will become the new Washington. Then they will continue the policy of the American Democrats in Brussels, and the opposite will happen to the European people and the Hungarian people. That's why the most important foreign policy goal for 2025 is to get the Soros empire out of Europe and back to America. Then Trump will do what he thinks is right. Hungary has always accepted this conflict. It will probably be the first country to get the Soros empire out of Hungary. This is my goal for this year. Looking ahead, it's time to fill our glasses with clean water and create foreign networks and send them back home. I hope that Hungary will not be alone in this, but that patriots in Europe will be on the same page, and not only Hungary will start this work, but others as well. This will result in countries like Brussels, which need to be shown the interest of the European people, that the Soros network is contrary to the interests of the European people, and that they need to the other side of the ocean.
What are the tools in Hungary and in Europe, and what tools can we expect from the current majority of Brussels?
The most important thing is that they have to take the money. They don't have to give it to them. The Soros network is being financed by the Brussels budget. We can't stand this, and neither can our money. At the same time, the biggest corruption in politics is that Brussels is in the pocket of George Soros. Brussels bureaucrats are serious decision makers. George Soros has an entrance. President Biden has just been elected in the last few days, but the Soros network is being accepted in Brussels. They are built in. If there is corruption, then this is it. I think the goal of this terrible situation and the most important thing is to simply take back the money. We can't give our money to the Soros network. We have to make them pay for the last 6 months, and we can't give them money. How can we achieve this? Who are the allies of the Soros network? We have to set a good example. We will start in Hungary in the spring.
This is the near future. On the other hand, the EU presidency ended on 31st of December. This meant a competitive situation. The Romanian-Bulgarian Schengen alliance, the Schengen party. What brought a new perspective to the Hungarian presidency, which was able to close long-standing issues?
The most important thing is that when the Hungarian presidency started, the success of the presidency was recognized by our political opponents in Brussels. We don't praise our own people or glorify ourselves, but if we put the statements of our opponents on the table, it can be seen that the Hungarian presidency. But when it started, only Hungary spoke about peace, and in the past half a year, everyone is talking about peace. So we managed to put the peace issue on the table and keep it there. God help us with the victory of President Trump, because the truth is that the peace mission that Hungary undertook was not in proportion to the international weight of Hungary. We did it as a kind of must-have and as a Christian country, from a voluntary commitment. So it's time for the president to take over Hungary, and from now on he should take over the difficult mission that is more fitting to the size of the United States. So this was the most important thing in the Hungarian presidency from my point of view, that the peace issue became a discussable, negotiable issue. In the past, this was simply seen as the sale of European interests, more than the others. The second important thing is that we broke the borders between Bulgaria and Romania and the Union. We worked a lot with the Romanians on this, with the Bulgarians as well, but we also worked a lot with the current minister-president, the Romanian minister-president, Mr. Solak, and finally managed to change the position of the 2 or 3 countries who opposed this. This was serious work. It took months. I praise Janos Boca and Minister Sandor Pinter for this success. This is a tiny bit of work. Every week there was a step forward in the negotiations. We reached the solution, and finally, the third important thing is that the negotiations with Albania and the Western Balkans were initiated, and we were able to bring it back to European policy. In the economy, we were able to make important decisions. I think that Hungary has exceeded the size and weight of the EU. The most important thing is that Brussels should adapt to the changed situation as a new era is beginning. First of all, in the matter of war and peace, and in the matter of sanctions, we will throw sanctions out the window and create a sanction-free international relations system with Russia. This is still there, but we have to work on it. The signs that arrive in Brussels are not reassuring. We would need a declaration, but they are still in the phase of calling. But this will pass, and the cat will arrive, and the declaration will begin. But this still takes a couple of months.
Ez még azért odébb van, de ezen dolgoznunk kell. Most a jelek, amelyek Brüsszelből érkeznek, nem biztatóak. Tehát most kiózanodásra volna szükség, ehhez képest a ráívás fázisában vannak még. De ez majd elmúlik, és megérkezik a macskaja, és utána elkezdődik a kiózanodás, de ez még kell 1-2 hónap.
The competitive ability of the EU was one of the focus of the presidency. This is a key issue, but we have data from November and December that show the economic situation. We see that industrial and construction production decreased, while the unemployment rate and inflation increased. Based on this, what should be done to make the 21-point economic policy fit into this situation?
Bármilyen furcsa, először is béke kell hozzá, tehát a magyar gazdaságpolitikai tervek köszönik, jól vannak, de ezek akkor...
First of all, we need peace. Hungarian economic policies are good, but they only work if the war does not escalate or spread. But if we can put an end to the sanctions and inflation, and then we can start dealing with Ukraine. Today we only deal with Ukraine through the eyes of the Russian-Ukrainian war, while Ukraine is a serious threat to the European economy. Now everyone speaks positively about Ukraine, which is understandable because of the war. But if we look at the period after the war, we see that for the European economy, Ukraine is a very serious challenge, even a threat. So if they do not pay attention in Brussels, and we patriots cannot pay attention to them, and Ukraine relates to the European economy as they want in Brussels, then the Hungarian economy can close the shop. But the Polish economy can also close the shop. Then the whole thing, even the French can easily get to it. So Ukraine is a member of the European Union. In general, without strict regulation, European agrarian societies can get to the economic relations. Serious protection measures will be needed here. But in general, in addition to the agricultural economy, the economic cooperation with the Ukrainians raises many questions, and I see many more dangers than there are opportunities from the Hungarian point of view. So we have to start dealing with Ukraine through non-war eyes. We are talking about a country that cannot stand on its own feet. So today there is no country without Western money. The economic activity that we could well integrate into European economic activity is currently not there. There are ruins. In the agrarian sector, where there is production, the Ukrainian economy does not. So this is an important thing, that while we are talking about the Hungarian economy, growth, employment, and so on, we should not forget that we are talking about a country that cannot stand on its own feet and is constantly supporting Western money. We are talking about a country that does not fit into the European system. So while we are talking about the Hungarian economy, we should always keep our eyes on Ukraine and Brussels. As far as the Hungarian economy is concerned, I am a well-off Duhai. We will have a fantastic year in 2025, but I always talk about the economy from the back of my neck, and I start from there. So we should not run so that our feet do not reach the ground. So we always have to meet the most important goals again. The most important goal is for everyone to have a job. And I see that in 2025, everyone who wants to work will have a job. The second goal is to be able to support their family from work and income. This will be possible because the wages will increase. People will be able to support their families easier in 2025 than they did in 2024. Our year 2024 was about how to compensate the losses caused by the war. There was a huge energy shock in 2023, which put the Hungarian economy and people in a difficult situation. In 2024, we had to recover what we lost in 2023. This has happened. This is why we have a good starting position for 2025. So the second most important thing is that everyone can support their family from work. The third is that everyone feels that they can move forward. So they are not only working not to be worse, but also to be better. If I speak in a sociological language, then I call it a centralization. So 2025 will be the year of the strengthening of the middle class. There are all kinds of definitions, but in my head, when I talk about this, I see people who have their own property, their own vehicle, their own income. They support their family from work, and their income is enough to support their family. So they get their money by the end of the month. This is the lower middle class. And then from here upwards. Those who are under this, we have to help them in this way of life, in the middle class way of life. So the 2025 economic policy aims to strengthen the middle class and to help the middle class in this way of life, as it did before COVID. Before COVID, this was the defining social process for Hungary. The starting points are good. I look at two things, as I mentioned. The first is how much they work. Between the age of 20 and 65, the employment rate of this age group is 80% or 81%. So we are in the 5th or 6th place. So Hungary has a lot of people who work and support themselves from work. The other thing is cleaning up. I regularly look at the financial statistics, and I see that the cleaning rate tells you how many % of your income you can make from later consumption. This is 24% in Hungary and 14% in the EU. This means that Hungary has a financial family system that can be mobilized in 2025. This is what the economists call consumption. But it's not just about this. It's not just about people's desire and need to move forward, but they have already made steps through their cleaning to make these steps possible. That's why I say that 2025 can be a fantastic year for Hungarian economy and for the whole world, not just the economy, but the families. So I expect a tangible progress on all levels of society in 2025.
You mentioned Ukraine as a threat to the Hungarian economy in the future, but we can see that there are storms in the sky right now. Gas has become expensive, the Turkish stream is in danger, and the German economy has shrunk in the next 2 years, which has only happened once in the past 75 years. What do you think is the biggest threat to the economic recovery, and how can it be avoided?
Energy prices. If we start from the fact that the war is no longer because Donald Trump is coming, then this danger will significantly decrease. So if I don't count this, then the biggest source of danger that we need to pay attention to is the question of energy prices. So we have to prevent Brussels from continuing such a sanctioned policy, and we should also cut it so that energy prices can be reduced. For Hungary, until PAX 2 is built, and the work will be completed between 30 and 32. Until that happens, we are out of service on the energy side. These energy prices, our plans, these energy prices will have a major impact on our economic plans. That's why I call this the biggest source of danger. We need smart energy policy here. It is not by chance that Ukraine stopped transportation through Ukraine, gas transportation. But years ago, we built a southern alternative route.
de mi évekkel korábban kiépítettünk egy déli alternatív útvonalat.
Now, as I see it, they are also trying to close it. We have to prevent all means to cut this source of danger for the Hungarian economy. We have to protect the Turkish economy. We have to make it work. Otherwise, we can't change our economic plans.